Hi, I'm Chris McBrien, a Gen Xer, and the pop culture from my generation is awesome.
And I'm Yancy Eaton, a millennial, and the pop culture from my generation is dope.
Episode 14, Best Movie Opening Scenes. Hey, Chris McBrien here. It's Pop Gojo World, along with Yancy Eaton. As always, got lots to get to this week. Yancy, what's new? Have you been watching anything new? Anything new, exciting going on in your life? What's shaking?
I have, Chris. First off, good evening.
And you too.
I hope you had a fantastic Canadian Thanksgiving.
Oh, I did. Lots of turkey and lots to drink. And lots of family, too. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, very nice. So happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I have been watching some stuff. I think you're going to be especially proud of me. I've been watching a lot of Netflix, so I'm trying to watch weird movies that I had not seen before instead of watching the same stuff over and over again. Like I've told you, I've watched The Office 5 times by this point.
Right.
The first one I watched was Contact. By Jodie Foster. Did you see that?
I have. It's
very,
very good.
I was actually super surprised at how good that movie was.
Yep.
And then I watched Sphere with Sharon Stone and Samuel L. Jackson and Dustin Hoffman.
Mm-hmm. Not quite as good.
Yeah, not quite as good. It was okay. It was okay. But anyways, you will never guess the movie that I saw today for the very first time.
Oh, I'm excited. What was it?
You like it a lot, and it's embarrassing that I had not seen it yet.
Is it The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh?
Close. It's Jaws. I watched Jaws.
Whoa. Hold the phone here. What? You've never seen it before?
I have never sat down and watched it in its entirety from start to finish. I've seen bits and pieces and stuff like that. I've literally never sat down and just watched it in its entirety. And
so, what's your take on it? I'm curious as a millennial, especially one from the digital age with CGI coming out your yin-yang. What do you think about a movie with a big rubber shark? How did it hold up?
So here's the thing. I don't want you to take this as me saying it is not a good movie. It's a great movie. I think the first act is by far the strongest, obviously. The third act is incredibly corny because it's literally just like the shark comes, the shark leaves, the shark comes, the shark leaves, the shark comes. It's literally the whole last hour of the film. That's all it is. I wish they would have expanded on it more. Like when you really think about it, only 3 people died in the movie. I know that makes me sound kind of like morbid and disgusting like a human being, but I wish there would have been more of like the underwater view where you see people swimming and stuff like that and the music's playing. That part was just the most captivating. Like I could literally just feel like my body tense up. It was perfect. Like some of the most perfect scenes I've ever seen. Obviously the opening scene with her, you may bring it up tonight. I'm not sure, spoiler alert. I'm not going to put that on you, but if there was one other knock I had for it, it was like at weird points, there was like really weird, symphonic music, like uppity, like ballad style music where it didn't fit, like with like xylophones and stuff in it. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but like really weird choice of instrumentation, like in certain scenes of the movie, like triumphant ballad music for like no reason, as like a shark is literally like coming to and from the ship. I don't know. I just thought it was really weird, but
I think more than 3 people died in it, didn't? Because Chrissy Watkins died at the beginning. The Kittner boy died. Ben Gardner, right. The Boy Scout leader in the boat, Quint. So there's 5. That's just off the top of my head. But
wait. Hold on. Yeah. The boy died?
Chrissy Watkins. Remember the Kittner boy on the raft? He went out in the raft and the shark attacked him in front of everybody and they'd closed down the beach.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
He never closed down the beach. That's why the widow slapped him in the face, right? Ben Gardner. Remember the scene when they go to Ben Gardner's boat and his head pops out of the bottom of the boat?
You're right. Okay.
Right?
Yes.
And then there's the Boy Scout leader. Hey, you guys okay? And the shark comes and attacks him. His leg goes to the bottom of the... I was 7 years old, by the way, when I first saw Jaws. Way too young. Saw it at the drive-in. My mom took me there to see it. Oh, my mom's probably going to get emails on this. So, 7 years old, I went to see Jaws. As soon as that scene came with the guy's leg when it hit the bottom of the ocean there, I was like, Mommy, I want to go home. I don't want to watch this anymore. I was so scared. I was like, I don't want to watch it anymore. I want to go home. I'm scared. Oh man, that movie's so good. And I guess I understand what you're saying at the end with the rubber shark coming up and stuff. I don't know. I think it all just plays really well I don't know. I think it works better than it would have with CGI, and I certainly think you're right. This first act of the movie works much better because the shark didn't work, but good on you. I gotta give you props. Good for you.
I tried. I watched it. I did enjoy it.
Very good. You know what? I did want to mention something as well. So We've obviously had an ongoing debate here on the show for the last month or so, I guess, since episode 10, since we talked about the original Star Wars trilogy. And Yancy, you referred to the Imperial Walkers on Hoth as AT-ATs, and I corrected you by calling them AT-ATs, and then the debate ensued from there. We've had listeners tweet us, we've received emails, none of which seem to sway Yancy into believing that AT-ATs is the correct way to say that, until now, that is. This week, I received a tweet from the legendary Phil Tippett.
Oh my.
The man who was originally hired by George Lucas at Industrial Light and Magic to create the tabletop chess sequence in Star Wars. The same man who was then pegged to head up ILM for The Empire Strikes Back. And also the same man who co-created the Go Motion technique to bring the Imperial Walkers to life. And Phil Tippett had this to say to me in a tweet. He said, and I quote, "I say AT-AT for Imperial Walkers. Chicken Walker, that's ATST. Hope that's helpful," from Phil Tippett. So, Yancy, will you now accept the fact that the Imperial Walkers are pronounced AT-ATs since it came right from Phil Tippett himself?
Listen, if I'm anything, it's humble, and I'm not too proud to admit whenever I'm wrong. Obviously, coming from a credible source like that, it was the verified account and everything, so there's literally no disputing it. Of course, you were kind enough to tag me in that tweet so I could see it for myself. So there's not a whole lot I could say, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So I had to prove that point. So, if you want to reach out to us on Twitter, you can make sure that you do it at Yancy Eaton or at C. McBrien. And also remember, you can always find all of our contact information at popgoesyourworld.com. Anyway, this week, we're going to be taking a look at the most memorable opening scenes in movie history. Let's hit it. Back in 1985.
I don't want to give people the wrong idea.
Saved by the Bell, the college years.
My wife knows about this. She's cool with this.
You know, like the girl from Dirty Dancing and Ferris Bueller?
I am in love with dank memes.
MC Micro G and DJ Swen.
Black people Twitter.
We'll go to Ring Ring a Dong for a holiday.
It's not something you just want to advertise.
Because rapping is my thing and I do it every day.
As you're singing this, I'm like cringing for you.
I pretend that I have my own show on the Food Network. Okay, so we're going to go with our top 5 list. Yancy, you're going to start us off. We'll go from 5 to 1, like always. Your number 5 greatest opening scene in movie history is?
Number 5, I went with a classic, the Stanley Kubrick classic. I'm sure you know already what it is. It's 2001, The Space Odyssey, the Dawn of Man scene, where it's like this 9.5, almost 10-minute scene, with very few cuts and stuff like that. And it's basically, quote unquote, the Dawn of Man. It shows, apes, and it shows them being attacked by, I think it's like a cheetah or jaguar or something like that. It shows them, two rival, tribes of apes basically fighting each other, and it's just this really long, weird scene. It's obviously people in suits, they're in monkey suits and stuff like that, but it's like a really haunting kind of super, super long scene. Obviously no English, there's no dialogue in it because they're apes, like we said, but it really sets the movie up because it literally goes from the actual Dawn of Man, and of course, as you know, the movie just completely jumps thousands of years just like that, and I mean it ends up in a totally different place. It's like this really, really interesting start to a movie that if you're thinking of a sci-fi film, you would never expect it to start like that, and that's kind of how I love it. A lot of movies, they kind of start out with they'll show you an opening scene and then everything comes full circle at the end where it kind of brings you back to that and it ties the ending with the opening scene. This is obviously completely different. It's just it's this lateral, just perfect straight line, and it's a super, super weird movie. So in 2001, A Space Odyssey is my number 5.
Excuse me. So Yancy, we mentioned this on the podcast before. I just want to reinforce this once again. You and I do not share our list before we come on. We turn on the mic and we just start spewing this. So we do not share things ahead of time, so we don't know what the other one is going to come up with. Correct.
Okay. Never.
My number 5, 2001, A Space Odyssey from 1968.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, I know. I am with you. I'm just saying. Hey, so we both agree on something here. We both have the same number 5. I agree with you. I think when it comes to iconic movie openings, you don't get much more iconic than that. That's for sure. You mentioned the Dawn of Man. There's no dialogue spoken, and there doesn't need to be. But one thing that there does need to be in that scene to make it really, really work is music. And Kubrick initially hired a film composer named Alex North to create music for the opening scene. He didn't like it, so Kubrick eventually went with Also Sprach Zarathustra by Richard Strauss instead. And the result, I mean, it's legendary. I mean, it's just a perfect blend of music and imagery, right? And you mentioned, the early humans are there. They're afraid, right? They forage for food. The monolith appears. They're given the ability to fight, and they sort of embrace aggression, right, in order to survive. And like you said, the shot of the bone being thrown into the air and then it turns into the space station. That simple edit that they did told the entire story of how mankind evolved from caveman into where they got into the future with the satellite. Brilliant. I agree with you. It's my number 5 too. What's your number 4?
I mean, that really is a podcasting first.
Yep, first time ever. We both agree on the same number and everything. But nope, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
It was really hard ranking this week just because there's so many that
so many good ones. I know.
And I didn't want to necessarily go for nothing but kind of low-hanging fruit. But if you're number one, it's number one for a reason. Like, I don't want to be contrarian just for contrarian's sake. Like, if something deserves to be on the list, it deserves to be on the list.
That's sort of the approach I take every week. I take a bit of flack for it sometimes, I'm being textbook and all that kind of stuff, which is perfectly fine. I totally get it. But there's a reason why a lot of people agree that something is the best, because it is. So you just got to acknowledge it. That's what I think sometimes. But
yeah.
Anyway, sorry,
all
number
right.
4.
Yep. So my number 4 is the opening scene from Inglourious Bastards.
Oh man, Christoph!
Obviously, it's a Tarantino film, which a lot of his opening scenes are particularly strong.
Yes.
It's a weird. What genre would you call Inglourious Bastards? Is it like an anti-history? Like, what would you?
Man, that's really really good because you
alternate history film or something.
Yeah, almost, I guess, and it flips things on its head. It's not really a war movie, that's for sure. It's more of sort of an intrigue. It almost reminds me of some of the film noir of like the 50s, of kind of that, but it's definitely right. You're right. Tarantino's movies, when they open up, they're usually quite heavily laden with dialogue and just unbelievable dialogue. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Inglourious Bastards is mine, obviously, just to set up the scene. We're in France, and the Germans have occupied most of Europe by this point. And you see Christoph Waltz's character. He's one of my favorite actors. He's one of the most versatile actors in the freaking planet. But he shows up with other Nazis to this farm, and this guy is a dairy farmer, and he has his wife that lives there with him, and I can't remember if he has kids or not, to be honest with you, but or he has older daughters. I don't think he has younger kids. Long story short, he is hiding Jews underneath his floorboards, and Christoph Waltz's character comes in, and he's obviously very clean cut. He is super super professional. He's very courteous. He asks if he can come inside. He sits down, takes a seat. He's super polite. He compliments, his daughters and saying, this daughter is even fairer than the last one. Like, all of your daughters are so beautiful. And they ask him if he'd like a glass of wine. And he very politely, he rejects that. And he says, are you a dairy farmer? I'll have a glass of milk. And then he's speaking fluent French, and then he speaks German, and then he'll speak English. And at the very end, basically, like, you feel this tension because he's hiding these Jews underneath his floorboard. They're literally standing underneath him, and at the very end he basically says, like, are you hiding them underneath your floorboard? Yes. And then let the commencement begin. They basically just unload on these people. It's like the craziest start to this. Like, they kind of build him up as like this likable, really charismatic character, Christoph Waltz's character. I can't remember exactly what his name is. It's something German, but they build it up, whatever, and then just like that, they completely tear it down. You see, like, these people are monsters. They're absolutely monsters. But it's just like with Jaws. It's one of the most just tense. Like, you feel it, like, emotionally. Like, you could feel it, like you're trying to choke you're trying to swallow your spit and you can't, kind of thing. It's just. I mean, it's really – I watch it in theaters with my friends in high school, and it was just absolutely incredible. And the whole film is like that. There's just so many quotable scenes and stuff, but it's definitely one of my favorite opening scenes.
That's a good one. Oh, man, that's a good one. My number 4 was one, like you mentioned, for your number 4, it was hard for you to swallow. You know what I mean? Like, because you're so tense. For my number 4, it was hard – for me, it was hard to breathe. I couldn't catch my breath, and that was during Saving Private Ryan. So the opening 20 minutes of the movie obviously depict the U.S. landings at Omaha Beach in Normandy. I think this scene is the greatest battle scene in movie history. It's shot, like, the style, it's almost documentary, right? And the sights and the sounds and just the way it captures this essence of, like, confusion and hysteria, and all while sort of being driven toward a almost insurmountable goal. It's amazing. No words can describe it. Like, the fact that it goes on for 20 minutes makes it one of the longest opening scenes in movie history. And I think the complexity, the detail of how it's shot, I think that single-handedly won Spielberg the Oscar for Best Director. Obviously, the fact that the film lost the Oscar for Best Picture is a whole different podcast in itself, and we'll get that another day. But for today, let's just say that the opening scene from Saving Private Ryan is the most incredible part of an incredible, incredible film. It's my number 4.
I wanted to put that on my list, but I mean, technically it's not the opening scene, right? Like don't they start out like basically at like a memorial or like the a graveyard basically? Isn't that how it starts out?
Yes,
like that's technically
yes.
the first scene, and then it quickly pans into it.
You're right. The older Matt Damon character is at the graveside, and he's actually going to, as we learn later, he goes to Tom Hanks. Was it Sergeant Miller? He goes to his graveside and visit with his kids and his wife and all that. So you're kind of right there, but I still think we got to think of that as an opening scene.
Right.
So I'll call it an opening scene.
Okay, fair enough. All right, what are we on, number 3?
You're number 3, yeah.
Oh man, this is tough.
It's great.
What do I want to make number 3? I literally have a whole bunch of names and stuff like that. I was having a really hard time with this. My wife and I were discussing this over dinner, trying to like parse these out. I'll go with Dark Knight. Dark Knight's opening scene. Everybody's seen Dark Knight. It's a fantastic film. One of the best villains ever. You know what I mean? Obviously, they basically rob a bank. Some kind of like crazy mastermind, robs a bank. They have 2 people that come in on a zip line on the roof. They have 3 people who bust in through the doors. Basically, like the Joker masterminds this whole thing to where he has everybody working together, but he's basically, told each person to kill another, and you basically watch as like they're overtaking this bank, they blow the safe, they take complete control, but you can see how it's like everybody in this is incredibly self-serving, and they basically kill each other off until there's only one other dude left. And then of course there's like the fun scene where he's like, oh, this is the part where I'm supposed to kill you. And then Heath Ledger's character basically says like, oh, I was told to kill the bus driver. He's like, who's the bus driver? And you literally see Heath Ledger, you see the Joker like walk 2 or 3 steps to the left, and then the guy gets run over by a bus. I mean, it's funny, but it's also like really, really dark. Of course, he shoves the grenade into the bank. I don't know what you would call him, the bank manager's mouth, and then pulls as he pulls away, the strings attached to the bus, and it rips the pin out of the grenade, or the smoke bomb rather. It's just a really, really weird, dark one. Like you literally see like half a dozen people die within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the film. So it just sets it up as like this being, like I said, one of the best cinematic villains I think we've ever seen. I mean, it's really unfortunate that he did go so soon, because can you imagine if he made 5 or 6 of these Batman films and just constantly developed that character? It just would have been amazing. But so that's my number 3. It was really tough because it could have been 2. It could have even been number 1. It was just so strong. But there are some movies that have been around for a little bit longer, and I think their impact culturally is just so much bigger that I kind of had to stick it in the middle somewhere.
Oh, it's all good. Okay, so my number 3, you mentioned it earlier. Yes, I'm going with it's Jaws. Opening scene, obviously, Chrissy Watkins, as I mentioned, played by Susan Backlany. She leaves this beach party. She goes skinny dipping at night in the ocean. What could possibly go wrong, right?
We see some frontal nudity, just a little bit, but there is some
just
there.
A glance. She's in silhouette, so you don't see a whole lot. But you're right. It's 70s nudity, right? But anyway, so she goes into the ocean and she gets brutally attacked by a shark, right? So, but what makes the scene so effective and so incredibly scary isn't what you see, but it's what you don't see. And that's what sets the tone for the whole movie. And I mentioned this before on a podcast. Spielberg originally wanted to have the shark come flying out of the water, and you could see the whole thing as it attacks her. But the mechanical shark, didn't work, before the days of CGI, like I said, thank goodness. So it didn't work, it kept breaking down. So Spielberg just went ahead, shot the scene so you don't see the shark, and it scared the crap out of people. There is nothing more vivid than your own personal imagination. And this scene plays on that, and also plays on the fact that if you think about it, if you were out swimming in the ocean, you couldn't see the shark coming either, right? So it plays on a lot of fears, and it was also responsible for creating a lot of fears at the time. And it just as a piece of trivia, so the actress, when she was doing the scene, she got fixed up with this harness, right? And the harness had 2 ropes coming off of it, and they ran all the way into the beach, where each rope was being held onto by a man. And it was these guys' jobs to take turns pulling on the ropes to jerk her around in the ocean to simulate the shark attack, right? And her job was to scream. The only problem was she started to realize as the scene is going on that if something was to actually happen to her, like if she's getting pulled under the water and starts drowning because these guys are, pulling her back and forth, no one would know it. Because if she screamed, they just think she's acting. And so a lot of that scene is the actress, she's screaming for real. And that just made the whole thing even more terrifying. It's an amazing scene. Amazing way to open up one of the best movies of all time. So that's mine. Number 2.
I will say too, the one underrated aspect of that is not just like screaming like help, help, but like you can sense like that moment of desperation where like she's literally being ripped in half, and at one point she screams like it hurts, like she's literally being ripped apart. You know what I mean? I love that part, and I love too where it keeps panning out and it shows like the guy like passed out drunk on the beach, and he's just kind of like laying there like hanging out, and like you just want to scream. You're like, get up, you know, like why don't you hear her? Go help her, you know? And she's literally just being like taken into the abyss. You know what I mean? It's perfect. It really is perfect.
So good.
All right, number 2. Oh, what do I want to make number 2? Number 2, we'll go with Apocalypse Now. Ooh, I wanted to make this number 1, but we'll go with number 2. This is one of the films where I know you know it and I know you respect it, and I was late to the party. I watched it maybe 2 years ago on Netflix, and I've since then watched it maybe half a dozen times. It is just the opening sequence. Obviously, it's another long opening scene, and you know, it shows the main character. It shows him. I think it's in Saigon. You know, he wakes up and it shows, you know, he has like a spoon on his nightstand. He's smoking weed, and then it pans out and you see the jungle, you see the napalm fires and stuff like that. And then it keeps panning back to him, back to the jungle. And it basically shows this guy who's kind of self-destructing, you know, just, you know, constantly drinking and doing drugs and stuff like that. And, you know, as it progresses and stuff, like he'll literally wake up in the morning, he'll go look out the blinds and he's like, oh, I'm still in Saigon. Like he literally wakes up and he doesn't know where he is. Like that's how destructive he's gotten. Obviously he's dealing with a lot of like PTSD and stuff. Like he'll look up at the ceiling fan and he hears a chopper. You know what I mean? It's you know, it has the only Doors song playing that I've ever really liked, the end, which is just like a fantastically beautiful song, some of the best drum work like you'll ever find. But you know, it's just talking about this guy, and it talks about like his relationship with his wife, or like he hardly talked at all until, you know, he said that he wanted a divorce. You know, every time he was home, he wished he was back out in the jungle kind of thing. And he's basically just waiting around. He's getting antsy because he wants to go back into war. You know what I mean? And of course it ends, that first final scene ends with, you know, he's drinking, and you know, he's super, super drunk. He's probably high too, and he starts doing like karate or like some sort of like kung fu. In like his mind, he's like preparing because, you know, he thinks that there's some guy out in the jungle who's getting stronger as he's getting weaker. And you can see him literally like falling apart emotionally while he's doing this. He's doing kung fu, and he's, you know, taking shots of like, you know, a fifth of whiskey or something. He punches the mirror. He gets blood all over himself, and he's naked, crying, bleeding on the floor. It's just this like, I don't know. It hits every single emotion. You don't even have to be, you know, you're never too young to have a Vietnam flashback, basically. I know that's kind of like a joke, but like you can see how real it is, and it's just a perfect scene. So that's my number 2.
There you go. Okay, my number 2. When I was 11 years old, I went to the movies and I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it instantly became my second favorite movie of all time. Star Wars is still first. And a lot of the reason why I loved Raiders of the Lost Ark so much is because of the first sequence in the movie. And since I've gotten older, I've obviously been able to rewatch it and also introduce it to my son, too. He loves it, too. And as I watched it as an adult, I was able to get a better idea of sort of just why the opening of the movie is so good. You know, the editing, the pace, plot, action, character development, it's all in there, all crammed into the first 12 minutes. We see that Indiana Jones is crafty and he's smart, and he's also really, really lucky. And we see the set of booby traps almost unlike anything we've ever seen in a movie. And by the time that huge boulder chases him out of the cave, you're almost as out of breath as he is. It's a brilliant movie opening, one of the best ever. And like the cool thing for me is that the scene is so action-packed, probably one of the most action-packed scenes in movie history to open a film. And then it's followed up by one of the most boring scenes ever. When Indy and Marcus are describing the Ark to the Army intelligence guys, to me, it's like a film school lesson in how to pace a movie, because the audience needs time to catch its breath. And that's exactly what Spielberg does there. And funny enough, you know, that comes to mind, the incredible thing is we're doing a top 5 movie openings of all time, and 3 of mine are from Spielberg. So, you know, he's not the best director in history of film for nothing, right, folks? Okay, number 1.
I thought you were gonna say he's not the best director in film, and I was like, wait, what?
No, he's not. He's not the best director in film for nothing.
For nothing. Okay.
Yep, he sure is.
Real quick before I give you my number 1, yeah. I posed this question. I basically, you know, tweeted out that I was, you know, preparing show notes and stuff like that, and I asked for some of our listeners and, you know, Twitter followers and stuff like that. You know, what are some of theirs? Obviously, a lot of the people that follow me and I follow are within the same range age range, maybe like 20 to 30-ish. A lot of people said Super Troopers. A lot.
Wow.
Like over half of people said it. With the cops pulling him over, and then they make the one friend eat like $100 worth of weed and $30 worth of mushrooms, and he's freaking out. I had to mention that. A lot of people mentioned Rounders. Did you watch that, Rounders?
No.
It's a poker movie. It's okay. I like Rounders, but it has its problems too. Saving Private Ryan, Super Troopers, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Coming to America, great opening scene, underrated scene.
Oh yeah, so good. This is his wedding scene, right? So
yeah. Boogie Nights, The Matrix, and Scream. Those are some of the other ones that we got. But
Scream is a good one too. Scream does have a good opening scene.
Scream is very, very good.
That's good.
When he calls her back, and all right, so my number one, not to stall, but my number one is it has a very dear place in my heart. I don't own this movie, but I wish I did, because it really is one of the best movies of all time, and it's The Lion King. I don't hate that I'm saying this. It is such a perfect movie. It's Disney's best movie. It still holds up. I mean, obviously everybody, I don't have to explain the scene to you. Everybody knows that it's, the sun's coming up and you see the little leaf cutter ants, everybody is like assembling all these animal creatures in the entire, kingdom and stuff. And, to see like a child is born, it's very kind of like, it draws a lot of biblical parallels, obviously, with, the son is born, basically, and it's the perfect start to like a perfect movie, and it's it's just iconic. Everybody hears that. I'm not going to sing it on the air because you kind of you took the mantle, you took the top spot as far as singing goes in the podcast, so I'll leave that
apparently
last week. But it's just a perfect film. Like I said, it doesn't need an introduction, it doesn't need a description, because everybody knows it. It's perfect for me, so it's my number one.
Okay, my number one, no big surprise here. You know what it is. It's Star Wars. I mentioned back on episode 10, I was 7 years old when I first sat down in a theater in Kitchener and I watched Star Wars. It was life-changing for me. It gave me a lifelong appreciation of movies and just how much that they can affect people. So I don't need to go into details. You know how it starts out a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But then, boom, full frame title of Susie Rice's Star Wars logo. Totally fills the frame. And then immediately is followed by the first note of John Williams' score. And then the logo just pulls straight back into space and the crawl starts. And the crawl was based on those old Flash Gordon serials that did the same thing. But the Flash Gordon crawls went really, really fast. This one went slow, and it gave you a chance to read it. And it gave you an idea what was going on in this whole world that you were just about to discover. And then it pans down to the planet's surface of Tatooine. Tantive 4 goes overhead, and then the Star Destroyer. And as a Star Destroyer makes its way over the frame of the screen, I've mentioned it before, but watching that on the big screen as a 7-year-old was the single greatest moment I've ever experienced in a movie theater. It'll never be repeated. Nothing will ever come close to that. And everything that follows after it, like Leia putting the plans into R2, the rebels fighting, and Darth Vader entering the ship. I'm sorry, if you're a kid, if you're not even a kid, if you're anyone sitting in a movie theater in 1977 and you are not affected by the opening scene of Star Wars, then there's only one explanation, and that's that you're dead. For the living, it's the single greatest opening scene in the history of movies. And interestingly enough, Yancy, before we go on, do you know what's missing from the opening of Star Wars?
What's missing?
Yeah, what's the one thing that's missing from the opening of Star Wars?
I don't know, Christopher. What is it missing?
Credits. So there's no opening credits in the movie.
That is true.
And so what happened was Lucas obviously started the movie off just the way that I described it. We all know it, right? And the Directors Guild of America basically said to him, George, you can't do that. Okay, and so they begrudgingly allowed it on Star Wars, but then when it came time and he made Empire Strikes Back, he did the same thing, right? So what the Directors Guild of America did was they fined Irvin Kershner $250,000.
Really?
As a fine for not putting the credits. Most importantly, of the credits, the director's credit at the front of the movie, because he didn't do it. So Lucas, of course, paid the fine and then dropped out of the Directors Guild of America. So the problem is now that because he's no longer in the Directors Guild of America, he could not hire his original selection to direct Jedi, and that was Steven Spielberg. He wanted Spielberg to direct Jedi, and he couldn't do it. So, no, instead he had to look outside the guild, and that's why he went with Richard Marquand. Richard Marquand was like a TV director. He had directed The Eye of the Needle as well, but just some interesting bit of fact on the opening, excuse me, on the opening of Star Wars, and just kind of how that played out, and a little bit of trivia on it. But still, the greatest opening in the history of movies, no two ways about it. Anyway, time to have some
fun with Yancy.
Okay, so this week, Yancy, we're going to play a little game. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to describe the opening scene. You name the movie. Pretty straightforward.
I'm not going to be good at this.
No, it's pretty straightforward. However, I'll tell you what. Since we had so much fun doing it on our game show episode, we're going to be doing it in the style of the winner's circle from the $100,000 pyramid. Okay, so just to recap, I will describe the opening scene. You name the movie. Ready?
Simple enough, yes.
Go. Blackness. A monologue that begins with, I believe in America. Marlon Brando stroking a purring cat. Man asked Don Corleone to murder 2 boys that raped and beat his daughter. Man sitting in chair stroking the cat is a mafia boss.
Oh, Godfather?
Yep. Close-up of a woman's mouth. Zooms into her eye.
My.
Screen turns red. Rooftop chase. Police officer and Jimmy Stewart chase bad guy across several rooftops. Jimmy Stewart falls off roof and grabs the eavesdrop.
Oh, is this Vertigo?
Yes.
Yes, clutch, Yancy.
An old mansion. An ominous gate. A no trespassing sign. Kane lies in bed. Snow globe in hand.
Rosebud. It's Citizen Kane.
Very good. A helicopter. Yellow smoke. Jim Morrison's The End.
Oh, come on, Chris, come on. Apocalypse Now, come on.
Glacier National Park. A winding road. Yellow Volkswagen Beetle makes its way up mountain roads. Snow-topped mountain. The Overlook Hotel.
Oh, Psycho.
Man takes a shining to his new digs.
Oh, The Shining.
There
Sorry.
we go.
I got them mixed up. This was a trivia question a couple weeks ago, and I just blanked.
Scarlett Johansson's ass. Scarlett Johansson's ass. Scarlett Johansson's ass.
Oh.
Scarlett Johansson's ass.
I don't know, Chris. What do you...
Scarlett Johansson's ass gets lost in translation.
I've never seen it.
It gets lost in translation.
That's the movie,
Lost in translation. Scarlett Johansson's ass. Good job. You did awesome, man. That was great. So look at that. You nailed it. Anyway, listen, thanks again for joining us this week at Yancy Eden or at CMcBrien on Twitter, Chris or Yancy at popgoesyourworld.com on the email. Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thank you for listening to the Pop Goes Your World podcast. Continue the conversation on Twitter at CMcBrien or at Yancy Eaton. Please consider leaving a review for the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.